Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Andrew Yang, the 2020 U.S. presidential candidate. All right, now this is my analysis of Andrew Yang as a U.S. Presidential candidate for the primary to run against the literally 24 different candidates that are going to be vying to run against President Trump. All right. Now, real quick, I'm gonna attach some goodwill to Andrew Yang, and I'm gonna talk about his overall approach to running for president and what he would do when he becomes president. But I want to make it really clear, he's a Democrat. Now, I have fundamental disagreements with Democrats that I could list for the next 30 minutes, right? And I think that he has most of these, right? But everything I'm talking about today for Andrew Yang is him in competition to other Democrats. So when I say, I think he's a good candidate, I mean he's a good candidate against the other Democrat candidates to run against President Trump or whoever the Republican Party puts up to run for presidency, which I think there's about a 95% chance it's going to be Trump, right? So let's talk about Andrew Yang, all right? So one, I think he's a fantastic candidate, and I'm talking about him today because I pulled him out of the pack, right? And the reason why I pulled him out of the pack to talk about him is for a whole lot of reasons. I think he's really distinct and really interesting, and I think he's a dangerous candidate, right? Now, when I say dangerous, I mean he is dangerous to all the other Democrat candidates, and dangerous in a cool, fun way, in that I think he is dangerous in that he has a very, very high probability of winning the primary and becoming the Democrat U.S. presidential candidate for multiple reasons, and I'm going to talk about those today. Primarily because of distinctors. He is distinct, right? Now, for the Democrat Party overall, they have over 20 different candidates that are currently running, and I think they fall into three boxes. They fall into insiders, outsiders, and spikes, okay? So insiders are Washington insiders, people who have been in Washington for a long time and are either a pure dyed-in-the-wool Washington politician, like a senator or a congressperson, right? Or an attorney general, or something where you were appointed to a Washington D.C. government job, right? And I think all those people, they're Washington insiders, and they are common as dirt in the Democrat. A good example would be Joe Biden, right? Like he's a Washington insider, right? So I think they have the hardest time by far because overall, one of the things that Trump has done is he has shown that there is a different way to do politics, and it's not the same old boring, hey, I'm going to come out here and do a stump speech in my politician patois, right? Like, and everybody's going to listen to me purely because I'm a politician, not because I have anything interesting to say. And I think Trump has just he's shredded that model and thrown it away. And I think the Washington insiders are going to have a very hard time selling their politician patois and their old traditional moves, right? So if you are a dyed-in-the-wool politician and you come out of Washington, straight out of Washington, you're really going to have a hard time. And I think those people you can push them to the side now. They don't have any ability to sway hearts and minds in America, in my opinion, or for the Democrat to win the Democrat primary, right? You have outsiders. Perfect example of an outsider is Andrew Yang, right? He is an American tech entrepreneur. He did not come from inside Washington politics, right? He came from what I will call the real world, and he competed, in the actual capitalist market, and you could, and this changes 50 distinctors about him, and I consider him an outsider. Okay, now what is a spike, right? A spike is somebody who is a Washington insider who there's something really unique about them, and they spike through the box, and you can see them, right? I think everybody who's a Washington insider, they're inside the Washington box, and you really can't see them, right? They'll be on television, right? But you've seen them a million times, and it's just going to wash over you, kind of like water off of a duck's back, right? But Kamala Harris, right? She's a Democrat who's an incredibly hard-driving, hard on criminals, DA. She was like a district attorney, and she's really different. She's a different kind of politician. I think she is purely a politician in many ways. She's a spike. She spikes through the box, okay? All right, so you have all that. You have insiders, outsiders, and spikes, right? Andrew Yang is an outsider, and I think the outsiders are the most dangerous. People who are governors are also outside. Like their politics come from within their own state, and it makes them uniquely different, right? Whereas I think the vast majority of Washington politicians, they sound alike, they look alike, they look, they're just not, they don't have any distinctors, right? Let's talk about what Andrew Yang brings to the table. Really, really fascinating candidate. Actually, I'm a huge fan. Within the Democrat pool, I definitely, at this point, I would like to see everybody who has announced they're running for president, and I love that he's in early, he's working hard, he's building momentum now, right? And I am incredibly impressed with Andrew Yang within the Democrat pool. So let's talk about him, right? All right, so what is his distinctor, right? Well, one of the big things he's talking about is his distinctor is an amazing UBI plan, Universal Basic Income, okay? So his idea is to give every person in America, every adult American, $1,000 a month, okay? And what and he's saying this isn't a government program, but he does admit it is universal basic income, and he says essentially that this is a freedom dividend. Fantastic name, I love that. So he calls it a freedom dividend, right? And the freedom dividend is, he is saying, it is us, the stakeholders of America, taking in some of the vast wealth of the nation. Great point, and great way to sell your program. His program is simple, it's easy to understand, right? And it's something that every American can consider getting behind, because everybody likes money. Doesn't matter what gender you are, doesn't matter where you stand on 50 million different politics, like everybody understands getting $1,000 a month, right? As an adult, as every voter, an adult American, which is also every voter. Well, I guess there's a few adult Americans, not many though, but the crossover is like 95% at least. So, all right, well, I guess the more I think about that, maybe not every adult American is a voter. I guess that's a bigger topic, right? But so he has this UBI idea, and it's really $1,000 a month, every adult American. And one of the things he's saying is like that this, and he also has the numbers around this. He says doing this will cost $2 trillion a year out of our $19 trillion economy, right? And he admits it will be challenging to do and it will be expensive. But he also says we're wasting a lot of money on programs now that you would be able to sweep away by putting this in place, right? Like homelessness, right? We spend a ton of money on homelessness, right? Well, if you have $1,000 a month, your homelessness problem, you just have a lot of resources that are coming together. If you have 3 people living in a homeless tent, those 3 people, now under Andrew Yang, they have $3,000 a month to get, an apartment or something like that, right? That's a lot of money, right? Considering, right? So I absolutely love how simple his plan is. Now, let me talk for a minute about UBI. I think that UBI is an absolutely terrible idea from the perspective of there's a possibility inflation will go up. He talks about this. He says he really doesn't think inflation will go up. And he talks about Alaska and like Finland and some other countries that did this before, and says, hey, inflation didn't skyrocket, right? So he can point at some facts. He's very, very adept at talking about this program, right? And I think that's why he's going to be so dangerous in the run-up to the presidential election, in the run-up to the primary, right? And in the primaries, I guess, is he has a program that everybody can get behind, right? So, like here, and I'll give you an example, right? What about like Elizabeth Warren, right? She has a really interesting program, right? She has this idea for daycare where where daycare would be a national program, and it would cost 7% of your salary. So it doesn't matter if you make $100,000 a year. The cost of your daycare is capped at 7% of your salary, and then Doesn't matter if you make $30,000 a year. Again, you're only going to pay 7% if you put your child into daycare, right? And some of that money can go to private daycares, and some of them will be national daycares, I think. This is a really, so, and that's one of the things too, is as you're coming into this election, you need to have a platform. That platform has to be easy to understand. Elizabeth Warren's is very easy to understand, right? But here's the problem, right? Let's say I'm a father and I have one child, and I need to get that child into daycare, right? Elizabeth Warren's plan is like, bet, I'm in. That's fantastic. I love that you have this simple plan, right? But if I'm a father, if I'm a man and I'm not a father and I don't have any kids, I can stop listening the moment that she starts talking about the 7% daycare plan, right? And that's the issue. Is it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be harder for some of these other candidates. Climate change, right, is another one, right? It's going to be hard. Like, some people are like, yeah, bet, I want to save the earth. Other people are like, man, I get my Starbucks every day in a plastic cup and a straw, and I don't want you to make me. I don't want you to make me feel, guilty about my coffee, right? Whereas when you talk about Andrew Yang, that dude is talking nonstop, right, about giving every American adult $1,000. How are people like, everybody's going to be listening? Like, there's nobody who's like, I really don't like $1,000. It's just so, it not only is it universal basic income, but it's going to get him universal attention, right? And it's just so much of a positive message over like issues like some of those other issues that are going to be talked about, right? Now, why does he want to give everybody this universal basic income? That's a really good question. And it's a super valid question, because you can't just roll out and go, hey, I'm going to give everybody $1,000 a month, right? Especially when right now we're in the middle of an era where there is ridiculously high employment, right? And it really is an employee market rather than an employer market, right? So why does he want to do this? And this is my favorite part of Andrew Yang as a candidate, okay? All right, so here it is, automation, right? He is incredibly dialed in on the threat of automation. He is saying that if you pay attention, some reports are saying that as many as half of the available jobs for America over the next 10 or 20 years could be automated. And he's super dialed in right now to something very practical and very real. Driverless cars, probably one of the first ones are going to be freight trucks, right? So semis and tractor trailers, they're going to auto, and Andrew Yang talks about this. He's like, and he came out of Silicon Valley. He worked in startups. He is an American tech entrepreneur, okay? He's also an Asian American. If he wins, he'll be the first Asian American to ever come into the job, right? And that's new. That'll be historical, and that's incredibly attractive to the Democrat Party, right? I think in many ways the Democrat Party recognizes that there was 42 white males in a row, and and they wanted to make a change, and they did with Barack Obama. And I think they're very, very interested in continuing to have diversity in their candidates, right? So Andrew Yang brings diversity in his candidacy, right? He actually checks some of those intersectionality boxes, right? So that's also good from the perspective of him winning the Democrat primary, right? All right, but on automation, he's talking about truck drivers, thousands and thousands of truck drivers, very, very soon losing their ability to drive trucks because robots are driving those trucks, right? And that's automation, right? Now, this is really effective because right now it's hard to tell people, oh, everybody in America needs $1,000 a month when unemployment is so high. But when you talk about automation, it becomes very clear to everybody. Everybody out there is like, oh man, yeah, my job could probably be done by a robot, or some portion of my job could be done by a robot, and that's scary. And now you're very interested in what Andrew Yang is saying again, right? Excuse me. All right. So now the automation thing. I want to talk about that. I want to kind of double down on that a little bit. One of the reasons why I'm so absolutely impressed with Andrew Yang talking about automation and the dangers of automation is he has a solution, right? I think that automation is probably the number one thing you could talk about in this coming election. And the reason why is it doesn't split it doesn't split the people who are willing to listen to it. Like, I think climate change is kind of a split, that not everybody's in agreement on it. There are many other issues that will very, very likely to split along gendered lines. Now, here's the issue. You should absolutely be able to talk about issues that are one gender or another. But if I come forward and I start talking about issues that only affect men, right? In the primary, I'm only speaking to half of those people, right? So if my main message is something that's already splitting the people who are listening and caring about one, it's not great. Automation is not split along any type of ideological fissures, right? It's not split. Everybody understands automation, everybody understands UBI, and everybody understands that it can affect them, right? And so it's just really immediate, right? Now, Andrew Yang has identified this very immediate, very universal problem, right? And he has this super clear solution to that he's saying, hey, check out this solution. I can fix this major problem. And it gives you an idea of his effectiveness. It gives you an idea of his intelligence. And I think it's incredibly smart and incredibly... Now, the other thing is, and this one really blew me away, all right? So I am right now watching politics very, very interested because we're running up to the 2020 presidential election. This is my football time, right? I absolutely love the presidential elections and the electoral process, right? It's candy to me. I love watching it, right? But the reality is, I have to admit, I've been paying very close attention to the 2020 Democrat candidates, and the reason why is there's nothing really happening on the Republican side. It's boring to watch. Everybody assumes Trump will be the candidate. There's nobody really interesting on that side because nobody really is even really making any real motions that they're going to really run against Trump. So it's dull, right? So I went over to the Democrat side to watch the stats and to see the politicians do their politician thing, right? Well, this blew me away. When I was listening to Andrew Yang talk about automation, it really struck me because I could tell. I was like, oh my gosh. So first I was like, oh, that's a cool stat. Oh, I love the strategies and the tactics here. But there was a point, I was listening to him, like his third or fourth interview I'd listened to, right? And I'd listened about 3 or 4 hours of his content at this point. I knew his voice, I knew his cadence, all this stuff. And I was like, holy crap, I think he actually cares about this, right? And this is huge. This is such a big deal, right? I talked about that politician patois, right? The politician patois is a politician getting up and talking to interviewers, talking to journalists, talking to audiences, and they'll take these pauses. It's only 2 or 3 seconds before they start their next sentence. But there's this expectation of, you will listen to me because I am powerful and I am used to being listened to, right? And Andrew Yang doesn't have any of that, right? He doesn't have that politician patois, and it goes even further than that. I think when you become a Washington insider, it is very hard for you not to see everything as tactics and strategy, right? And when you talk about caring things, you could say, I genuinely care about things. That's the issue. Andrew Yang really never says, I genuinely care about it. You can tell, right? You can tell because he talks like a real person, because he is a real person. He hasn't been dipped and marinated and drowned in 10 or 20 years of Washington politics. He's still, it's stunning to me, but I genuinely think he actually cares about the things he's saying. He actually cares about thousands of truck drivers, right? And boy, I will tell you, that was surprising to me. It was surprising to me to be affected by a Democratic candidate and saying, oh my gosh, I sense genuineness, right? Because usually I just don't. If you're a Washington insider, I'm not sure you can actually even project. You could be genuinely care about something, but it's almost impossible to project it because you have this veneer of politician, right? And Andrew Yang doesn't have any of that, and you could see his genuineness. So there is a genuine care for American people in Andrew Yang. I've listened to probably two dozen interviews of his. I understand what his plan is thoroughly. I think UBI is a terrible idea, but I I really like his plan, and I think from a tactics and strategy perspective, I think Andrew Yang is a dangerous man when it comes to the primaries. I think he is very, very well positioned to take the whole ball of wax. Right now, I would say that he has an 85% chance of being the candidate that the Democrats will elect if the Democrat Party is serious about beating Trump. Okay, I think there's a large possibility that the Democrat Party will go, we don't have any chance of winning, so we're going to have a message candidate, a candidate who can talk to the media for a year and a half, and position us for another 4 years of verbal tactics and strategy against the president. We don't really actually, since there's such a low chance we're going to win, let's not really run a candidate. Let's take the time to get our message out, right? But if the Democrats go, no, we're in it to win it, right? And they're paying attention, I think Andrew Yang is absolutely their best shot at. So one, I think Andrew Yang has the best shot of being the primary Democratic candidate, and I think he has you know what? That's an entire video about what his chances of beating Trump are. And I think we're a little early on, so I'll hold off from that because we're not there yet. But that's my take on Andrew Yang. I'd really be curious what you think if you've heard his interviews. What do you think? Do you think he is genuinely caring about Americans? Do you think his plan has a possibility of being good for America and that I'm wrong about UBI? I'd love to hear it. Thank you very much. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful day.